I am speaking to you from the Cabinet Room at 10 Downing Street. This morning, the British ambassador in Berlin handed the German government a final note stating that unless we heard from them by 11 o'clock, that they were prepared at once to withdraw their troops from Poland, a state of war would exist between us. I have to tell you now that no such undertaking has been received, and that consequently this country is at war with Germany.
Liberated Germans welcomed Hitler to Danzig as a hero. After having blocked the path to any peaceful discussion for 7 years prior to the war, Britain and France declared war on Germany on September the 3rd, 1939. On the 5th of September, the first bomb was dropped on German soil by the Royal Air Force. The Soviet Union then invaded Poland from the east and massacred tens of thousands of innocent Poles, but the Allies said nothing. The Allies only used Poland as a dummy to start the war. Churchill would even give over Poland and the whole of Eastern Europe to Soviet after the war. The French actually invaded Germany on September the 7th. The German army, now reinforced with troops returning from the Polish campaign, conducted a counteroffensive which took back the lost territory from the invading French. In liberating what the French had invaded, the German lost 196 soldiers plus 114 missing and 356 wounded. On September 17, 1939, the German-Polish War was already over. Hitler's mission had already been accomplished. If Great Britain and France would not have declared war, the war would have been stopped right there, and millions of lives would have been saved. However, Britain had plans of a long war, and they did not want peace. The quiet period between the end of the Polish War until May 1940 is called the Phony War. During this period, Germany continued negotiating for peace. British Duke Arthur Wellesley, 5th Duke of Wellington, said, "This declaration of war is the fault of the anti-appeasers and the fucking Jews." During his speech on October 6, 1939, Hitler pleaded for peace once again. He said, "At no time and in no place have I ever acted contrary to British interest. I believe even today that there can only be real peace in Europe and throughout the world if Germany and England come to an understanding." The majority of Poles understood that the Germans were not their real enemies and had no hand in the game whatsoever. The border conflicts were instigated by the Polish or Jewish partisans encouraged by the Jewish-owned press and the Polish dictator Smigli, working in close cooperation with Roosevelt. A collection of secret Polish documents which fell into German hands when Warsaw was captured in September 1939 clearly established Roosevelt's crucial role in bringing on the Second World War. They also revealed the forces behind Roosevelt which pushed for war. In September 1939, Adolf Hitler said, "Time and time again have I offered friendship and if necessary closest cooperation to England, but love cannot be offered from one side only. It must be met with reciprocation by the other side. Germany is not pursuing any interest in the West." In October 1939, Hitler proclaimed in his speech of a new peace proposal to prevent more Europeans being killed in a senseless war. If the Allied powers wanted peace, they would long ago have taken the hand that was stretched out to them, but no. The fate of this plan was the exact same as that of all the other previous appeals made by Hitler. No response. On the 4th of November 1939, Roosevelt and his Jewish advisor Bernard Baruch instead decided to repeal previous neutrality acts to be able to sell arms to warring nations and to soon enter a new war against Germany. The Daily Herald said in December 1939, "Stop talking about peace conditions. Break Germany in pieces." The Allies planned of invading Norway and Sweden, attacking to cut off Germany's iron ore resources from Sweden by illegally mining Norwegian waters and then occupying the important Norwegian port of Narvik. On 8 of April 1940, Britain violated Norwegian neutrality by mining Norwegian waters. Plans were also made for building a base of operations in Denmark, Germany's neutral neighbor to its north. These Allied plans were called Operation Wilfred and Plan R4. The Norwegian politician named Vidkun Quisling confirmed the existence of these Allied plots. Quisling had served in the military from 1911 until the mid-20s, specializing in Russian affairs. He was stationed in Russia and saw the Bolshevik plague firsthand. In 1929, he returned to Norway and served as a diplomat and later Minister of Defense for two governments. In 1930, he wrote Russia and Ourselves, where he spoke of the dangers of Bolshevism. In 1933, he founded the National Samling, National Unity Party, to save Norway from the threat of communism. On Adolf Hitler's 50th birthday, Quisling sent him a card thanking him for saving Europe from Bolshevism and Jewish domination. Hitler told Quisling, after making one proposal after another to the British on the reorganization of Europe, I now find myself forced against my will to fight this war against Britain. Quisling, who was sympathetic to Germany, did not want his country to become a battlefield, so he informed Hitler of the plot to wage war from the two Scandinavian countries. In the early morning on the 9th of April 1940, Germany therefore quickly put Operation Vesterboom into action and came to secure Denmark and then the Norwegian port of Narvik just before the British could place their mines. This was a preventive maneuver against the planned Allied Operation Wilfred and Plan R4. Thus, Hitler prevented the UK from using Norway and Denmark as bases of operation against German shipping. German diplomats calmly assured the leaders of both Scandinavian nations that Germany seeks neither conquest nor interference in their internal affairs. The Germans dropped leaflets over Denmark which explained their actions, condemned anti-German British warmongering and propaganda, and reassured the Danes that Germany would protect their country. Life under limited German occupation went on without any problems for the Scandinavians during the war, and most of the Nordic people were happy that they were protected by the Germans. Hitler's pleas for peace was repeatedly ignored as British and French troops had massed in northern France. Plans were openly discussed to advance eastward upon Germany via Belgium and Holland. As another preemptive act of national self-defense, Germany took the fight to the Allies before the Allies could invade Germany and reinstitute a Second Versailles Treaty on her. The armies of Britain and France were no match for the new tactic called Blitzkrieg. To Britain and France, who anticipated fighting in the trenches like they did in the First World War, this new German war machine came as a surprise they could not handle. The Germans quickly seized vital territory and resources, which outflanked and trapped the Allies on the coast of France. Hitler invaded the League of Nations member states of Belgium and the Netherlands for their strategic location and for collaborating with the Allies. The Low Countries governments were under intense Allied pressure to allow safe passage for the planned Allied attack on the Ruhr region of Germany. The German government later published a 50-page English-language paper called Allied Intrigue in the Low Countries, which was detailing the full extent of their cooperation with the Allies, explaining why the Germans invaded the Low Countries strategically. The Western press and the modern historians have kept these allegations secret from the public ever since. Jewish-owned press, as well as today's history books, instead portray the Blitz as the Nazi conquest of Holland, Belgium, and France. Churchill's colleague Alfred Duff Cooper said, "War to death against all German people." Lord Beaverbrook wrote to Frank Gannett in December 1938. The Jews are after Prime Minister Chamberlain. He is being terribly harassed by them. All the Jews are against him. They have got a big position in the press here. I am shaken. The Jews may drive us into war, and their political influence is moving us in that direction. On the 10th of May 1940, Chamberlain resigned, and Winston Churchill came to power, without the consent of the people. Churchill was born on November 30, 1874, into the aristocracy of Great Britain. He joined the army and wrote popular books about his military adventures. Churchill was a supporter of eugenics and introduced the Mental Deficiency Act that required those with mental disabilities to be confined to institutions for the duration of their lives, though he originally wanted sterilization. He also introduced the People's Budget, which increased taxes on the wealthy in order to fund social programs. He helped set up his country's first minimum wage and pensions for the unemployed. He was behind the National Insurance Act, which provided sickness and unemployment benefits. The same day that he came to power, Churchill invaded the tiny neutral Iceland in the invasion codenamed Operation Fork. Iceland was a neutral country, but that really didn't seem to matter. The occupation would help to secure British control of the Atlantic. The British quickly moved inland, disabling communication networks and securing landing locations. The government of Iceland protested the violation of their neutrality. Icelandic police officers wanted to stop the British invasion, but they later decided not to resist the superior British force. The US intended to use neutral Iceland as a base of naval operations in the North Atlantic. Many men from Iceland instead volunteered to fight for the Waffen-SS. On 24th of May 1940 at Dunkirk, Hitler had the opportunity to capture the entire British army, but chose not to. Instead, he issued the so-called halt order and delayed the attack for 2 days, leaving the British time for a chaotic evacuation from the port of Dunkirk, hoping that the British finally would lay down their weapons and so they could have peace. Almost everyone saw this as a gesture of peace. All heavy artillery, tanks, and armored vehicles were left on the shores of France. German General von Blumentritt said, with regard to the halt order, Hitler then astonished us by speaking with admiration of the British Empire, of the necessity for its existence, and of the civilization that Britain had brought into the world. He compared the British Empire with the Catholic Church, saying they were both essential elements of stability in the world. He said that all he wanted from Britain was that she should acknowledge Germany's position on the continent. The return of Germany's colonies would be desirable, but not essential. And he would even offer to support Britain with troops if she should be involved in difficulties anywhere. Churchill was now too drunk to deliver speeches himself. So drunk, in fact, that he hired the actor Norman Shelley, who voiced the Winnie the Pooh for the BBC Children's Hour, to impersonate him. He made the most famous radio speeches in 20th century British history, impersonating Churchill, and fooled tens of millions of listeners. After 6 weeks of German blitzkrieg, Paris was Hitler's. Hitler and Field Marshal Pétain made peace. The armistice was signed in the same railway car in which Germany surrendered after World War I. After the delegations were done, Hitler went home to Berlin, where he was welcomed home as a national hero. A life in northern France went on peacefully for the French civilians during the temporary wartime German occupation of 1940 to 1944. The manners of the German occupiers was impeccable. Many French women even fell in love with German soldiers. That same day, Hitler via a Swedish third party presented Britain with yet another offer of peace. The Germans contacted the British ambassador in Sweden, Victor Mallet, through Sweden's Supreme Court Judge Ekeberg, who is known to Hitler's legal advisor Ludwig Weissauer. Hitler's new peace proposal was as following. The British Empire retains all its colonies. Germany's position on the continent will not be questioned. All questions concerning the Mediterranean and its French, Belgian, and Dutch colonies are open to discussion. Poland, a Polish state, must exist. The former Czechoslovakian state remained independent but under German protection. Hitler's peace proposal demanded nothing of Great Britain and entails that the states currently occupied by Germany would be de-occupied, as Germany's occupation was only provisional due to the present war situation. But no, Winston Churchill was not interested in making peace. This offer was rejected. Thanks to Churchill, German peace efforts via Sweden also failed. In the afternoon of 25th of May 1940, Giuseppe Bastianini, the Italian ambassador in London, requested a meeting with British Foreign Secretary Lord Halifax to discuss Italy's neutrality and that of Italian mediation between the Allies and Germany. Bastianini revealed that the goal of the Italian Benito Mussolini was to negotiate a settlement that would not merely be an armistice, but would protect European peace for the century. Halifax responded favorably to it and took the idea to the British War Cabinet, where he summarized his meeting with Bastianini and urged his college to consider Italian mediation. Again, Churchill will have none of it, as he was not interested in making peace. Never even once did Churchill consider Mussolini's offer to mediate peace between Britain and Germany. The matter eventually died. Thanks to Churchill, German peace offers via Italy also failed. Instead of accepting any peace offers, Churchill answered with frightening the British people with fear-mongering tales of a coming German gas attack. A month after England evacuated Dunkirk and the Axis victory against France, Hitler extended his hand one final time to end the meaningless bloodshed.
I had the occasion to talk to him without any other company. And I told him we will have the opportunity to attack London when London is covered by fog, and we can fly with everything we have ready, even with the Junkers 52, like we did in Warsaw. And he said, stop it, stop it. I don't want to hear this. The whole attack on England is against my opinion, against my willing. I could stop it. The English population is of such high class, and they are so similar to the Germans that I hate to fight England.
In June 1940, Hitler dropped peace leaflets over London. In this hour, I feel it to be my duty before my own conscience to appeal once more to reason and common sense in Great Britain as much as elsewhere. I see no reason why this war must go on. I am grieved to think of the sacrifices it will claim. I should like to avert them. Pamphlets and speeches where Hitler offered peace proposal after peace proposals were not enough. Churchill and his Jewish advisors wanted war.
Meine Angebote an England selbst kennen Sie. Ich hatte nur das große Ziel, mit dem britischen Volk eine aufrichtige Freundschaft erreichen zu können.
Adolf Hitler had never desired any war against the United Kingdom and continued sending out generous peace offers. Awaiting a response from Britain, the Germans remained passive. There was even a big peace movement in the summer of 1940 in Britain. Repeated peace rallies took place right outside Churchill's windows.
In those days, demonstrations could march down Downing Street up to number 10 and stand outside Churchill's window and scream and say, "We are tired of your war, we want peace." And it happened. There were repeated demonstrations outside his windows.
Churchill realized that he needed a pretext to destroying Germany. Because Hitler didn't want to initiate any bombing raids on London, there was no other way that Churchill could drag the Americans into the war unless he could provoke Hitler to do it. Churchill explained his intentions to Joe Kennedy, the American ambassador, father of the late president. "I want the Germans to start bombing London as early as possible because this will bring the Americans into the war, and above all it will put an end to this awkward and inconvenient peace movement that's afoot in my own cabinet and among the British population." It has been proven that it was Churchill, not Hitler, who initiated the bombing of civilians. According to the Geneva Convention, it was a major war crime to bomb civilians, but Churchill deliberately ordered the RAF to do it anyway. The quiet period of the phony war ended on the 11th of May 1940, the day after Churchill became Prime Minister, as he immediately unleashed the aerial warfare on the German cities, starting with Freiburg. The British Royal Air Force was ordered to bomb civilian areas. The following day, he launched his first attacks on transport targets in the German industrial Ruhr Valley, including Cologne. During May, Mönchengladbach, Gelsenkirchen, Hamburg, Bremen, Essen, Duisburg, Düsseldorf, and Hanover were attacked. In June, attacks were made on Dortmund, Mannheim, Frankfurt, and Bochum. On the 3rd of July 1940, British warships attacked French naval units in the North African port city of Oran to not fall into German hands. Churchill had clearly indicated that he did not want peace. Churchill then ordered raids on Berlin, which went on for the next 7 or 10 days.
Hitler didn't respond. Not to that first raid, not to the second, not to the third or fourth. Getting angrier and angrier though. September the 4th, Hitler made a famous speech at the Sportpalast in Berlin, the biggest hall, tens of thousands, a chosen audience. He made a speech in which he said, this madman in London, he's now trying to provoke us. If we chose to, we could. If he drops 10 tons of bombs, we can go back and drop 100. If he drops 100 tons of bombs on our town, so I can go back and drop 1,000 tons. And I will one day, I will one day. If they come and destroy it, say they can destroy our cities, he said, I will rub out theirs, ausradieren, I will rub out their cities. Very famous speech, which is what Churchill was waiting for. Very next day, September the 5th, he orders a mass air raid on Berlin. Finally, on September the 6th, broad daylight that afternoon, the London population could hear the tread of the approaching German bombers coming up the Thames. And that afternoon, September the 6th, 1940, the beginning of the Blitz, 6,000 Londoners were killed and wounded and injured in that air raid. That's what Churchill wanted. It was the opposite of what Hitler had wanted. Now Churchill had tricked him into the mood that he never wanted to make.
As a result of Churchill's deliberate provocation, a furious Hitler finally retaliated and started bombing the docks in London, the East End of London, finally the City of London, and the West End on November 6th and 7th, 1940. In September 1940, 7,000 Londoners were killed in the bombing. On 16th of September 1940, on the orders of Winston Churchill, the British unleashed 100,000 of high-explosive bombs and 14,000 firebombs in the first deliberate terror bombings of civilian districts of Mannheim. Deputy Führer Rudolf Hess was Hitler's right-hand man and longtime friend. He was Germany's second in command. He was the guy who typed out the dictation for Hitler's Mein Kampf. In 1940, Hitler asked Hess to get in touch with his English friends and tell them, or any voter, that Germany only looked for peace.
He says privately to Rudolf Hess, you've got these aristocratic friends of yours in England you're always talking about. Can't you contact them in some way and tell them that we want nothing from the British, that we just want peace, we want an end to the war? Can't you get this message across to the British people somewhere? You've got these contacts there. But Hitler had said this to Rudolf Hess, you've got these friends in Britain, now you can surely contact them and tell the British that we want nothing.
His offer for peace was the following. Hitler would be prepared to withdraw the troops from France, the Netherlands, Belgium, Poland, and even Czechoslovakia. He also wanted Britain's agreement to have a free hand in the East to defeat communism. He also wanted the former German areas back. In addition, Hitler offered that the German Wehrmacht would protect the British Empire if she ever was threatened by any enemy. In May of 1941, Hess flied a solo mission with his Messerschmitt Bf 110 over Scotland. At a time when Germany was winning the war, he parachuted in, carrying yet another offer of peace to Britain. Hess was fluent in English and attempted to meet up with what he believed to be British peace activists and to link up with the Duke of Hamilton, who Hess had befriended before at the 1936 Berlin Olympics. He wanted to convince his British friend of Germany's sincere desire for peace. Instead, he fell into Churchill's hands and was arrested. Winston Churchill, of course, refused to agree to Hitler's peace deal offered by Hess. Churchill instead imprisoned him for life and ended Hess' desperate peace mission. Churchill refused all peace offers and kept them from the public. Hess was held in solitary confinement for the duration of the war, on Churchill's orders to hide who was the real warmonger of the war. Secret government documents revealed that the British received over 24 offers of peace between 1939 and 1941, most notably in September 1939, October 1939, July 1940 after the fall of France, January 1941, etc. The peace offers fell on deaf ears, as Churchill would have none of it. He would instead continue doing his utmost to drag the US into the war. The warmongers would find other means of continuing the war.
Ich war allerdings vorher sehr traurig, denn ich habe ja alles getan, um den Krieg zu vermeiden. In diesen Tagen, da hat Sven Hedin ein Buch herausgegeben, in dem er dankenswerterweise mein damals den Engländern übermitteltes Angebot für die Polen wortwörtlich nun zitiert. Ich muss sagen, ich habe eigentlich ein Frösteln gefühlt, als ich nun dieses Angebot wieder durchgelesen habe. Dann auch aus dem, was ich seitdem nun weiß, denn wenn damals dieses Angebot angenommen worden wäre, dann wäre wohl Danzig deutsch, aber im Übrigen wäre alles beim Alten geblieben. Wir hätten uns unseren sozialen Aufgaben gewidmet, wir hätten gearbeitet, wir hätten unsere Städte verschönt, wir hätten Wohnkolonien gebaut, wir hätten unsere Straßen in Ordnung gebracht, wir hätten Schulen eingerichtet. Wir hätten einen richtigen nationalsozialistischen Staat aufgebaut. Und nun ist der Kampf gekommen. Ich habe auch hier alles getan, was ein Mensch überhaupt tun konnte, fast zur Selbstentwürdigung, um es zu vermeiden. Ich habe den Engländern Angebot gemacht. Ich habe mit ihren Diplomaten hier gesprochen und habe sie beschworen, sie möchten doch Vernunft annehmen. Aber es war nicht zu wollen, sie wollten den Krieg und sie haben auch gar keinen Hehl gemacht. Seit 7 Jahren erklärt Mr. Churchill, ich will keinen Krieg. Ich habe das bedauert, dass Völker gegeneinander kämpfen müssen, die ich so gerne zusammenführen wollte. Führer Adolf Hitler, warum dürfen wir nicht zurückschlagen? Warum müssen wir uns das bieten lassen? Ich musste jahrelang sie immer wieder zwingen, legal zu sein. Und so ist es auch heute. Ich muss manches Mal monatelang irgendwo zusehen. Glauben Sie nur nicht, dass mir nicht das Herz vom Grimm zerfressen wird, wenn ich von diesen Luftangriffen höre. Sie wissen, ich habe monatelang das nicht getan. Ich habe auf Paris nicht eine Bombe in die Stadt werfen lassen. Ich habe, bevor wir Warschau angriffen, 5-mal die Aufforderung gerichtet nach Ergebung. Es wurde alles abgelehnt. Ich habe gebeten, man soll dann die Frauen und die Kinder wenigstens rausschicken. Nicht einmal der Parlamentär wurde empfangen. Es wurde alles abgelehnt. Und erst dann habe ich mich entschlossen, das zu tun, was nach jedem Kriegsrecht statthaft ist. Als die Engländer mit ihren Bombenwürfen anfingen, da habe ich 3,5 Monate gewartet und habe nichts getan. Wir waren schon stark genug, es zu tun. Ich habe gewartet, bin in der Meinung, es würde vielleicht doch die Vernunft zurückkehren. Es kam anders. Glauben Sie, heute ist es nicht anders. Und nun, meine Volksgenossen, die Opfer. Sie sind für den Einzelnen sehr schwer. Die Frau, die ihren Mann verloren hat, die hat das Höchste verloren, was sie besitzt. Und das Kind, das den Vater verlor, desgleichen. Und die Mutter, die ihr Kind opferte, oder auch die Braut oder die Geliebte, die den ihren ziehen ließen und ihn nimmer mehr sehen, die haben alle ein großes Opfer gebracht.
Es möge sich jeder Deutsche dessen bewusst sein, dass das Opfer dieser Männer genauso viel wert war, als das Opfer jedes anderen in der Zukunft wert sein wird. Was die Frau an Opfern auf sich nimmt, indem sie der Nation das Kind schenkt, nimmt der Mann an Opfern auf sich, indem er die Nation verteidigt. Für unser deutsches Volk sind im Laufe von vielen Jahrhunderten, ja Jahrtausenden, zahllose Millionen gefallen. Millionen andere haben ihr Blut dafür gegeben.
Ich habe so oft die Hand geboten, es war umsonst. Sie wollten diesen Kampf, Sie sollen ihn jetzt haben. Und das deutsche Volk wird diesen Kampf weiter durchführen, bis zu einer ganz klaren Entscheidung. Das deutsche Volk will endlich Frieden haben. Und zwar einen Frieden, der es arbeiten lässt, der nicht jeden internationalen Halunke es ermöglicht, andere Völker gegen uns aufzuhetzen. diese Leute natürlich, für sie ist der Krieg der größte Verdienst. Ich habe keinen Grund, Krieg zu führen, aus irgendwelchen materiellen Interessen. Für uns kann er nur traurig sein. Uns nimmt er die Zeit, dem deutschen Volk und der ganzen Gemeinschaft unendlich viel Arbeit und Arbeitskraft. Ich habe keine Rüstungsaktien in meinem Besitz. Ich verdiene in diesem Kampf nichts. Ich würde glücklich sein, wenn ich wieder arbeiten könnte, so wie ich früher für mein Volk gearbeitet habe. Aber diese internationalen Verbrecher, sie sind zugleich die größten Rüstungsgewinner, die es gibt. Ihnen gehören die ganzen Fabriken. Sie machen die Geschäfte. Das sind die gleichen Leute, die wir früher auch in Deutschland hatten. Ich wünsche nicht den Kampf. Wenn er mir jemals aufgezwungen wird, dann werde ich ihn führen, solange in mir auch nur ein Atemzug lebendig ist. Und ich kann ihn heute führen, weil ich es weiß, dass hinter mir das ganze deutsche Volk steht. Wenn dieser Krieg abgeschlossen sein wird, dann soll in Deutschland ein großes Schaffen beginnen. Dann wird ein großes Wacke auf für unser deutsches Lande ertönen. Dann wird das deutsche Volk die Fabrikation der Kanonen einstellen und wird dann beginnen, in den Werken des Friedens unserer neuen Aufbauarbeit für die Millionen Massen